This is the Hebrew lesson from April 23rd. This is part 2. Shalom, shalom. Here we go. So all, right? And it says it means besides, which is accurate, and it's a preposition. So that's the first word of the verse, and what we're going to do is some numerics here to show you the power of numbers in Hebrew. So remember what I said in the Hebrew, that could just as easily read 70-30, which is the numerical value of the ayin and the lamed, right? This first letter is an ayin, and the second letter here, because we're going right to left, is a lamed, right? Which gives it a pictographic meaning, as we've talked about. The ayin is eyesight, or the eye, and the lamed is a shepherd's staff. So that would be an interpretation you'd have to meditate upon, what the pictographic meaning is saying to us. But it's, I see the shepherd's staff. But numerically, it would be 70 and 30, which means the word has a value of 100 in the Hebrew. So this is where I was doing a little research to prepare for this, and let me see. So here's a Hebrew word that has a value of 100. This is kaf. And what we're getting at here is when you do the scriptures, words that have the same numerical value are connected to each other. There's a connection. There's something in the meaning that's connected to each other. So this is a kaf, which is 20, and a pei, which it's a final pei, so it looks a little different than maybe how you're used to seeing it, but that's an 80. So 80 plus 20 is 100. So kaf, this is the letter kaf spelled out, right? If I spell out the letter kaf, this is how it's spelled, with a kaf and a pei, kaf. And so kaf has the same numerical value as this word besides, this first word in Leviticus 7:13. So in Joshua 1:3, you have the sole of your foot. I don't know if you can see it there. I'm highlighting it. That word sole of your foot is kaf. But kaf has a double meaning. It also has the meaning of the palms of your hand, and that's found in Psalms 24. He that has clean hands, that's the word kaf. So I'm going a little quickly, but like I said, don't get bogged down if you can't get every detail. That's fine.
So kaf, soles of the feet and the palms of your hand?
Right, it's both. Okay. So when we're talking about the letter kaf in the Hebrew, which is 20, and we're in the year 2020, right? So some people have pointed out that because we're in the 2020, that's kaf, kaf. So that's the palms of the hand and the soles of the feet, right? And it's also the palms of the hand was the consecration in Psalms 24, and the soles of the feet is taking territory. Everywhere the soles of your feet shall step, you shall claim as territory. So there's a lot of depth there. But when you see hands and feet, what's one of the things that might come to your mind concerning Jesus? I mean, we're looking back in hindsight, but hands and feet makes me think of the crucifixion, right?
Yes.
So these are clues in the Hebrew, all in Leviticus 7:13. So the first clue is hands and feet, the kaf. The second clue that comes out of that word, that's also 100, is found in Exodus 21. So this is the one, redeemed. This word redeemed in Exodus 21:8. That word is, in the Hebrew, it's a vav because it's and redeemed, right? And the redeemed, literally, is what it says. And I'll show you that in a second once I finish spelling it out here. So pada is the word for redeemed that's being used here. Right? Pada is redeemed. But this is the amazing thing in the Hebrew. This is God's genius, because when I conjugate a word, it changes the numerical value.
Yes.
So in this case, it's ve, which is the word and as a prefix, and it's ha, which is the word the, and the redeemed is what that literally says. So this has a numerical value of 100. So the hay is 5, the dalet is 4, the pay is 80, the hay is 5, and the vav is 6. So pada means redeemed. By itself, it wouldn't have a value of 100. But when in this verse, when you put the and the on the front of it, it adds those extra numbers and you get the phrase and the redeemed. You see, is 100. Remember, when I see the first verse of Leviticus 7:13, I'm not just seeing a word, I'm seeing numbers, like a computer code. So when I see 70 plus 30, 100, I'm saying, what other words in the scripture have a numerical value of 100? And here I come across this one in Exodus, and it's the phrase, and the redeemed. So I had hands and feet was the first word, kaf, that we found that's 100. And then we have and the redeemed. Now, an interesting thing is pada is a word for redeemed, but if I go to Leviticus, now I did my homework here, so I can show you some tools as we go along in these lessons so you can do the same thing eventually, but I'm sort of just giving you the big picture so you can get a glimpse of the powerfulness of, now this says Leviticus 25:48, so that he may be redeemed again, one of his brethren may redeem him. Except in this one, the word redeem is not pada, it's a different word. There's two Hebrew words for redeem. So we're speaking of a totally different Hebrew word for redeemed. But here's the amazing part. In Leviticus 25:48, and I'm going to write this out, it's a yod, a gimel, an aleph, a lamed, noon, and it has to be a vav on the end there. And that what the phrase here means is shall redeem him. The yod in the beginning makes it what we'd call future tense or imperfect in the Hebrew, meaning it's not completed yet. So this is referring to shall redeem him in the verse, right? And it's one Hebrew word, even though in the English it's three Hebrew word or three English words. You only need one word in the Hebrew for that phrase. And you get the 10 and the 3, and hopefully the numbers add up. If they don't, I go back to the drawing board. Figure I did something wrong in my notes, but it added up at the time. So let's see. So you get 6, that's 86, 87, 90, 100.
Whoa.
So you get redeemed twice, adding up to 100,
Wow.
but two completely different Hebrew words.
Wow.
So just in the first word of the verse, Leviticus 7:13, you get hands and feet, which remind me of the crucifixion, which we said, Jim, you weren't here, but it was kaf, which is the Hebrew letter, spelled out is a numerical value of 100. And then we showed where it's redeemed twice, but two different Hebrew words for redeemed. So that's the first word of the verse, which is just besides, it's just a preposition, right? It's not a what you would think would be a very significant word. But starting the verse, say, wow, this verse has something to do with redemption and hands and feet. Ooh, that's a big clue. And when we're looking back in hindsight, we're going to be saying, you know, wow, that makes me think of Jesus. So this is halot, which we said was the feminine plural of the word challah, if you've ever heard of challah bread. And this is a het, the first letter, going right to left, right? So the hard H, the ch, and then the lamed, right? And a het was, it's a huppah is what the picture is really, a wedding huppah, but it's also a wall or a fence. And then you get the lamed, the shepherd's staff, and then you get the tav, which is a marker or a cross in the Hebrew, the pictographically. But what we're looking at today, we're not going to go off on the pictographs too much. That's another day's study. But what we're looking at is a numerical value. But here you have het is 8, lamed is 30, and tav is 400, so you get 438. Now, to an English reader of the scripture, you say, big deal, 438 means nothing to me. Unless you happen to live at an address, and then you're amazed. You're like, I live at apartment 438. Wonder what that means. Anyway, here's my nerdy sense of humor coming out. So Leviticus 6:17 is where I found a word with this numerical value. So Leviticus 6:17, see this phrase, the sin offering? That has a numerical value of 438.
Wow.
So let me go back to my whiteboard. And this is the word hatah. If you've ever seen the Hebrew word for sin is hatah, but it's got the kaf in front of it, so it's hatet, right? And then it's got a little key in front of it, right? And the key is a little Hebrew preposition that's put on as a prefix, and it means as or like. So as sin or like sin, sin offering. But in the Hebrew, there's even a little extra hint, because it doesn't just say sin offering, it says as or like sin. So remember, Jesus became sin. He became as sin for us. He was the substitution. And if you do the numbers, hopefully it adds up. Ever since we made that mistake in public, with the numbers, I always think, oh boy, I hope it adds up. So you get 420, 430, 438. So the halot, the challah bread in the plural, has a numerical value of 438, and so does as sin, or like sin, or sin offering is how it's translated in the verse. So this is the end of part 2, to be continued in part 3. Shalom, shalom.